Hafide, and welcome to My Story. I'm Janella Carrera, your host for this show. Tonight, we will share the endometrial cancer survival story of a young lady who was diagnosed 10 years ago. When she was diagnosed, she was just 28 years old. She had to choose between her life and the chance to bear children of her own. So stay right there. My story will begin in just a few minutes. Hafide, and welcome to My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera, and joining us for this edition of My Story is Ms. Rebecca Respicio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. So you're a survivor of endometrial cancer.
That's correct.
Can you tell us, I know that endometrial cancer deals with, the uterus. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, before you even got the diagnosis, and I know this happened a long time ago.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost exactly, right?
To the month, yeah, to the
month,
T,
yeah. What was life like? I mean, just explain what you were doing from the day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Well, life was really busy. I still maintain the same job. I work for the government of Guam, so that's full-time.
Oh, so 10 years ago you were doing the same thing?
I was still working in the same department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
so, but life before that event, definitely I was living things a little bit more carefree, not thinking about the time frames that I had in life to make things happen for myself, not thinking about, not thinking about children at the time, but knowing that I definitely wanted to be
children.
A mother
at
some point. Yeah.
Right.
So, I wasn't thinking about deadlines in life. I definitely was doing a lot of things I wanted to do, and I still am. That didn't change that. It just changed the path,
Well, and even because you were how old at the time?
28.
28. So even at that age, I mean, most people would tell a 28-year-old, go live your life, be carefree, and, don't think about deadlines,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I was thinking, okay, just get more secure in my career. Let's finish a lot of other goals and deadlines, some travel opportunities,
Right.
and just have fun, and think about settling down and having children after doing all of that.
Yeah.
So I really felt like I did things in the right path that I had seen for myself. I just maybe today would have done that a little different.
Now that you think about it,
Yeah.
looking back.
Yeah, looking back, I probably would have planned to have children prior
Sooner.
to that. Sooner,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So tell us about some of the symptoms, like leading up to the diagnosis. Were you experiencing symptoms?
I actually was. When you think of endometrial cancer, obviously it's with our reproductive system. So as females, we get our monthly cycles. And so I was always irregular growing up. And a lot of it I thought, and the doctors even said, oh, it's because of my weight. My weight always fluctuated, through high school and even after that. And so just this one moment, like in January of 2006, I ended up getting a monthly cycle that wouldn't stop.
Oh, wow.
And it wouldn't stop, and I was experiencing heavy bleeding and no real other symptoms like associated with a menstruation cycle, like no cramping, no, it was just
Constant bleeding.
constant bleeding, and then it would stop, but not enough time in between cycles for me to make my appointments to see a doctor. And when I finally called a doctor, and I was finally open about, okay, like I really need to make an appointment, but I can't have my physical exam because I'm still bleeding and that it won't stop. And so she ended up giving me a prescription for a medication that would make it stop.
Oh, okay.
With enough time to have
an
pap
exam.
smear, an
Oh,
exam,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Did it stop?
It did. The medication slowed it down enough to where there was like a maybe 2 or 3 day window period where the doctor said, once you come to complete stop, come in, and we'll take you as a walk-in, and we'll.
I didn't know you could do that. Make your bleeding stop.
Yeah.
I would do that all the time. I'm just kidding.
Well, apparently it's part of. It's one of the pills in the birth control packet.
Okay.
Because it's actually the pill that makes you have a period.
Right.
So what my body did was it got tricked into thinking I was being prepared to have a period,
I see.
so that was my main symptom. And
what was the longest period of bleeding that you
oh
had?
my gosh, first it was like 2 weeks, and then it would
Straight.
stop. Yeah,
Wow.
and then it would stop for like it stopped for like a week, and then it came back. And right from that second one, I thought, maybe I'm just making up for missing a couple months here and there along my, years.
Yeah.
And then it wouldn't stop, and then it was 3 weeks, and then maybe 4 days it would stop. And then it just was getting heavier and heavier. And already I knew something was wrong, but I really did not think it was cancer at all.
Yeah.
I just thought, I'm either making up for lost time, and I think that's the misconception with a lot of people I've talked to who have the same cancer.
Yeah.
They think the same thing too.
They're making up for
but they're just making up for
because you had those months or periods where you didn't have it for how long, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. So so you called and you made an appointment.
I made an appointment and I had my physical exam. I had a full physical exam at the time, and at the time it was with Dr. Erickson, the late Dr. Erickson. And she did a physical exam on me and called me back in less than a week and just said, look, I know we've been talking about your menstrual cycle issues for years, because I've had, she's been my doctor for years.
So she's been familiar with...
She said that my results came back with a significantly high level of the HPV virus. And so I was like, well, what does that mean? Because I was like, is this dealing with like a sexually transmitted disease or something? And she said, no, it's not. I had no STDs. I had nothing. And I knew that my activity was not going to lead me down that path either, but she basically recommended that I get a biopsy, but she couldn't do it because she's not actually an OBGYN.
Okay.
And so she referred me to another doctor at a different clinic who could see me the soonest, and I did my biopsy. And still at that moment, even, in the process of having a biopsy, because it was an invasive biopsy, I still wasn't thinking cancer. I absolutely was not.
I mean,
I was
you were
thinking,
young.
I'm not in any pain. I felt fine.
You're young.
I'm young. Like, it's not dealing with any other kind. And I didn't know a lot about that.
You didn't have any habits. You didn't smoke or...
I didn't, no.
Or drink or anything.
No, I didn't. And I, the only thing I was really familiar with at the time was other kinds of cancers. I wasn't thinking of that. And after my biopsy, the doctor was clear. She said, all right, Rebecca, we'll call you in 2 weeks. And that's because she was going off island. And I thought, well, 2 weeks, okay, then it can't be serious.
Right, yeah. Because usually they'll be like, okay, we got to see you in like 2 days.
Yeah, we're going to rush this or anything. But no, she says, I'll call you in 2 weeks. And in, I want to say, 3 or 4 days later, I got a call. And,
did that worry you, getting the call sooner than you expected?
The doctor, it wasn't even the doctor that did my biopsy. It was Dr. Lujan. She gave me a call and said, we got your test results back from Hawaii, and the envelope marked it urgent, so we had to open it up. And so what I want to do is I want to send you, because Dr. Hawkins is off island, I want to send you to Dr. Berdelio. And I just said, well, I was trying to get into her clinic to do my biopsy, but it's really full. And she said, no, I'll make a phone call for you, and we'll get you in there as soon as possible. And I still wasn't thinking of cancer. I really wasn't. I was just thinking, okay, well, they found something.
There's a number of other things that it could be.
And then all I thought was, well, maybe it's just dealing with my reproductive system, but I did not think of the big C.
Right.
And so my appointment was like, it was like a Friday. I got a call. My appointment was on Monday. And so thus began my journey.
Well, before we get to the appointment itself, you mentioned that they found high levels of HPV. Did they mention that is like an indication of potential?
Well, yeah, and it was. I didn't know anything about HPV really. Now it's like so easy. It's so
everybody
known
gets
and talked about. In fact, they even now have a shot that they're recommending certain
like
ladies at a young age get that HPV. It's like a preventive measure. And so I didn't know too much about it. I looked it up, and it was like a human papillomavirus. There's a lot of contributing factors to it. It could be as a result of just my not having those regular monthly cycles. There's more that I'm not releasing certain levels of estrogen. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, because normally HPV, when you hear about that, it deals with the cervix, cervical cancer.
Correct.
So I find that interesting that that's what...
Well, my levels were high for that, but it ended up being a uterus...
a uterine thing. Okay, so you got the call on a Friday to come in. You went in on Monday. Tell us about that experience.
Well, so that whole weekend, We actually had some kind of a family thing that weekend, and so I didn't even tell my parents what was going on because I don't want to tell anybody without really knowing what I'm going to tell them.
Right.
And I'm more of like a calm person, so like I felt it was really important for me to know exactly what I needed to be uptight and upset and worried about before I actually get upset and worried. But I admit that I was scared.
Yeah.
And so the first person, I told one of my best friends, I said, man, I have an appointment on Monday. Like they found something, but I don't know what it is. That's all I said. And so then I finally told my sister-in-law, my oldest sister-in-law, and I said, I don't know what's really going on, but I have an appointment on Monday. I think it's going to be okay, but it's Monday at 4 o'clock. I just told the time. I said, I'll just let you know. And I told my cousins. I told just like 2 or 3 of my female cousins.
Right.
And so Monday came, and I geared up for that appointment, and I went to it, and my cousin showed up, and my best friend was there too. And basically I just said, okay guys, I'm going to go in to my appointment, thanks for coming. I didn't really expect them to come, but I guess we kind of had that thing where we support each other.
Right.
Even if it's unidentified circumstances, we still support each other. And I went in, and it was Dr. Bordalio, and she opened a piece of paper and started reading some stuff, and was just really casually giving me information. And then I heard the word cancer. And she actually didn't tell me, you have cancer. She just says, well, endometrial cancer, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And she probably said a whole bunch of important things I didn't hear. I really didn't. And I said, okay, wait, stop. What did you say? And then she says, well, didn't Dr. Lujan tell you why you're here today? And I said, no, she didn't. And so thus began her explanation of exactly what it was. But I think I just had a meltdown at that moment because all I heard, all I remember asking was, can I have children? And that's when she said, we don't know.
Wow.
And these are your options.
Yeah. Okay. Well, when we come back, we're going to go to a quick break. We can talk about, the options that you had to choose, and maybe, what life was like after the diagnosis. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll be right back. My story. Welcome back to My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera, and once again joining us, Miss Rebecca Respicio. And before we went to break, you talked about, what life was like before the diagnosis and then leading up to the actual diagnosis. So now let's talk about, after you got the diagnosis, what were some of the options that Dr. Bordalio laid on the table for you?
Well, she basically told me that that I could undergo some treatment in hopes to reverse the cancer. She told me that there's medication that I could take and they could monitor it. And then she told me I could have a hysterectomy, which is a surgical procedure to remove a total complete hysterectomy. And, having the hysterectomy really absolutely meant it was very final that I would not be able to bear children the normal way.
And you were 28 at the time, and you had never had children?
No, that's correct.
At that time.
So that's why it was such a big decision to make. It seemed very final, and then I thought, okay, I could try the medication, see how that pans out. And Dr. Bordalio, she's really upfront, and I appreciated that because even though it was hard for her to give, the information is hard to receive.
Right.
She really just point blank said, well, if you came to me because you were trying to have a kid and it wasn't happening for you, and this was discovered as a result of that process, then I would work with you and I would show you different ways to make it happen and figure out the cancer along the way. Right. And she said, that's not the case for you right now, so you need to make a decision that's going to ensure you have many more years to come. And I still, 28, this is not supposed to happen, this is not part of the plan. And I really did want to experience motherhood in that very precious,
the pregnancy,
natural way.
right,
Exactly. And so I told her I needed time to think about it at that time.
The medication options, was that was it like chemo, radiation?
Radiation, and then there was, it would probably be an oral pill also. Yeah. But even that, she told me, there's still no guarantee I could have children after that because medications and processes and treatment can ruin the area that's being treated, which would be my reproductive system.
Because it kills cells and all that.
That's correct. Yeah. And it does damage to your body as well. Yeah. And so I toyed with the decision because I was also dealing with how am I going to talk to my family about this. I was worried about my parents and how they would handle the news. My grandmother's brother had passed away not long ago from cancer that spread to his brain. So my family was already in a very heightened, sensitive stage about the big C, about cancer. And 10 years ago, cancer and the awareness levels, it's just not like it is today.
Right.
So even as far back as 10 years ago, it was still hard to talk about that and really admit it and share that.
Yeah, there was
very
still
private,
a little bit.
It was really for life wasn't around, and all of
or
these
if it was,
stuff.
it wasn't as
it wasn't as
now.
big.
Right,
Yeah, it wasn't
today.
a big thing today. So broke the news to my family, and it's kind of weird because after I left that appointment, and I was like, how am I going to tell them? What do I do? My sister-in-law that I had told called, and she actually said, "Sister, how did the appointment go?"
Yeah.
And I just broke down, and I told her over the phone, and she said, "Come over here." So I instead of going to my parents, I went over to her place, and they went with me to talk to my parents about it. And then my grandmother also was the next person that I told. And, it was hard for everybody to hear, so I'm trying to manage my own emotions while trying to comfort their emotions and saying, like, I'm okay, I'm not in pain, I don't feel these things. That's why it's still hard to grasp and understand. Like, a lot of people get diagnosed with cancer because they're already so sick, and then that becomes what it is, right? The diagnosis. And so I waited and I did some research on my own.
You were at an early stage when they
That's correct.
When
it was still stage 1. It was end of stage 1, early, starting stage 2.
Did that help you make your decision as to the treatment plan?
Yeah, because, but that also held back my decision because I thought, well, if it's early on, maybe I could try something different, So I did some research and found out that it was a very slow progressing cancer. Like, I probably quite likely had it already for a few years, maybe a couple of years or so, and then just felt the symptoms suddenly. So one day I was taking my time with the decision. Obviously, I maybe thought if I buried it, I wouldn't have to face it, and I would eventually wake up one day and know the answer. But that was never happening. And Dr. Bordalio said, well, if you have the surgery, you'll never have to wake up and wonder if cancer came back. You'll never have to wonder if it's growing. You'll never have to wonder if it passed your uterus walls and invaded your other organs.
Because at that point it hadn't yet, right?
No, it hadn't. Okay. Well, there was no real 100% way to know until she went in. But she was pretty confident that it still wasn't there at that level. And then one day on like June 9, 2006, I remember the day, my grandmother called me and she said, come over here, I need to talk to you. And I knew it was because I had been stalling with a very important decision. And she just, I went in and sat with her and she said, what are you waiting for? And I just said, well, I really want to be a mom, And then she said, girl, I had my own children, all in the natural way. And the only thing I remember from that is everything after the day they were born. And she said, that no matter how you get to be a mother, we're going to love your children, no matter where it comes from, whether or not you push them out or whether or not you go pick them up.
Wow,
like
your
in the
grandmother is such a wise,
Definitely.
loving woman.
And then finally what got to me was, sorry.
It's okay.
She said, okay, well, you want to be a mother, and if you're ever going to be a mother, you have to be alive. And so that did it. I just poof, the light went on
Yeah.
in my darkness.
Yeah.
And because I don't think I felt I was in darkness, but I think I really was, you know, in avoidance.
Right.
And so I thought, oh my gosh, if I really want to be a mother one day, whether it be through adopting or just being a mother figure to whoever comes my way, I really did have to be alive, right?
Yeah.
And the only 100% option, I'm not going to say guarantee because anything can happen, right?
Right.
But the only 100% option that I had to lead me that way would be to have the hysterectomy. So I called Dr. Bordalio same day. I got home and I called and I said I made a decision and I want to schedule my surgery. And my surgery was on June 16, 2006.
Wow. So,
Almost
exactly
10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it done here in
Yes,
Guam?
I did. I thought about whether or not to leave, and Dr. Bordalio was really upfront about that too. She's like, look, I've done thousands of hysterectomies.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you can go spend money and go off island and have somebody better than me do it, and then have a 6 weeks to 2 months recovery in a strange place, not in your own home, spending money for you and somebody else, because somebody would have to come with me to help take care of me. She said, or you can let me do it. You can let me do it, and you can trust that the worst that could happen is I could open you up and I could say, wow, it's a little farther along than I had anticipated. We do what we can. We close you up, and we either send you off island for treatment or you have to do chemo and radiation after that. And so she said, but let's do what we can right here, because she trusted our local facility and she trusted herself.
Right.
And that's all I needed to hear.
Yeah.
I thought, well, okay, let's...
And you're in the comfort of home with your family surrounding you.
She's like, you're going to need a recovery period because of it's a surgical, it's a hysterectomy, it's a cut. And I would have to be off from work. So work was understanding, and I got the leave that I needed. And after that, the journey was just more the healing and the emotional processes that come along with the acceptance and the realization that for real it was taken out of me. And the good news is that it was completely as she anticipated. She came back on my hospital bed when I woke up and she said, well, we're sending definitely your uterus to Hawaii for post-testing to make sure that, it is what we said it was, and that it looks good, Rebecca. We were able to get everything out, and you don't have a reproductive system anymore. And this puts you in surgical menopause, so now your journey is menopause,
Hearing that at 28, huh?
Oh, man. That was a whole different journey. But, it's 10 years later, and all I could think was, I don't think that getting cancer is lucky, but I do feel lucky. I really do. And I think whatever challenge came my way, it definitely was for a purpose and a reason. And so now I just am motherly to my nephew and two nieces, and I have godchildren and a lot of kids in my life.
Cool
Auntie church Nina. And work, and I'm surrounded by children every single day. And
is there anything that you, when you look back on it, anything that you would have done differently?
Probably pay more attention to my body. And I didn't get, for a full physical exam, I think I was behind a couple of years. So I think I do regret that part. But differently, probably wouldn't have wasted that month of worry and make the decision.
Making that decision.
But it all happened. It happened the way it did, and it happened in the best possible way. And so now, I know that other people out there have a more treacherous and harder cancer journey than I did. That's probably what delayed me, and I've been doing this story. But I also know there's a lot of people who went through what I did. Without treatment or radiation, but still had something in their life change as a result of cancer.
And cancer affects everyone, whether it's in small or big ways. So.
And it did. It affected my family too. I'm the only daughter.
Oh.
So then
so you're the baby. You're the princess.
Having that. I know my parents. They're just like, we just want you alive. You don't have to worry about not giving us grandchildren on your part. you know, but
you
everything
have
did work out.
very supportive family.
Yeah, I do.
That's great.
I do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your
welcome.
story with us, and wish you all the best. And
Thank you
I know
so
you're in
much.
remission now, so that's great.
I am.
Yeah, that's great.
I am.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Rebecca, for joining
you.
us. And that's my story. Thank you for watching.